Well, here we are breaking the rules a little bit with this radio because this is an ITT Weekend 350, but I'm listening to it on a Wednesday. Is that allowed? Anyway, this is an interesting design, I think. This sort of dual two-way tuning scale. So what they've got is the FM and long wave are here and the medium wave is over here. And I don't know why this was done. It has the advantage of making the tuning string quite simple to fix if you break it, which, as you know, I often do. But it seems a bit weird, and they've got strange scale markings here as well. So they've got BBC, and then they've just got like 3, 4. Presumably this is Radio 3, Radio 4, and Radio 1. So this would have dated from around late 70s before the wavelength changeover. But they've also got some IBA stations, that would be commercial radio stations, Independent Broadcasting Authority, marked on here as well in the medium wave, but it doesn't tell you what they are, just where the frequencies are. And then they've got the usual markings on long wave and similarly on FM. But the other thing they've got, similar to the GEC we looked at earlier, is like a centimetre scale at the top. So if you can't remember what frequency your station was, you could write down that it was at 4 centimetres on the long wave or something like that. Very strange design, as I said, but actually I find it quite appealing, really. I think it's quite neat. It's to do with, as usual, most of these things. It's a bit old to do the clean ups. Handy little handle here which folds right back into the thing. Lovely little toggle switch for the frequencies. Can't quite see the markings there, but there is a little red thing that indicates it. Earphone socket, 4 1.4 AA batteries, which is quite rare for that time. They're usually like C cells and things like that. And it's got a main socket as well. You can power it from the mains, so it's actually I think it's probably quite good value at the time. The only thing I would say, I mean, all the wavebands work. There isn't really anything wrong with it, so there's not a lot to do with it apart from clean it up.
No, it's going to lose horrendously.
You make it sound really easy, but when you've got people like Sir Ian McKellen, or did you say Stephen Fry?
Rather, you didn't. One of the things I have noticed is it sounds quite tinny, so I don't know whether that means there's something wrong with it or it just wasn't particularly regarded as a high quality thing. We'll have a quick look inside it anyway, even though there doesn't appear to be anything wrong with it, because I always like to dismantle things, as you know. Now, ITT, as you know, well, you may not know, but it was mentioned in a previous video, were the inheritors of the Colster Branders, KB, which they did put on their radios for a while, on their branded radios for a while, and of RGD, which was featured also in a previous video. This one seems to have been beyond that point, and it was just an ITT badge thing, but it's about the same size as the RGD Rover that we looked at before, and which I keep mentioning. It's one of my favourite radios. So let's have the lid off. Or rather, not the lid. We shouldn't call it the lid, should we? The back. Anyway, I'm going to dismantle it, is what I'm saying. So, right. Do I need to take the batteries out? Is always a question with these things. Because they usually sometimes screw under the battery compartment, but we'll see. I never like it when some of the screws are different sizes, but there seems to be the little. We have to remember that the little one went in here. Assuming that, which ones have I done now? Yeah, that's just that one left to do, isn't it? Those other two seem to be the same size. Yeah, and so is that one. So it's just this one is the short one. I have to remember that one, putting it back together. Let's see if it will now. Oh, it actually does come apart. Not terribly. No. So, yeah, it sort of comes apart. They made the wiring to the mains adapter very tight, as you can see, so I can't quite lay it down flat. If I do, well, I can do that, but you can't really see it. So, Yeah, it's pretty standard sort of thing. They put a couple of slightly longer wires, I think, there onto the mains transformer, made it a bit easier. Then there's a little power supply board here, bridge rectifier, usual stuff, linear power supply there, and I think you can see the reason why it sounds a bit tinny, and it's probably this tiny speaker here. I'm not sure really how big that is. There is a scale on here, but I can't really read it at the moment. I'm just going to go and get a ruler. God, this really is very tight. I really can't see the excuse. How much money did they save by not putting another 2 inches of wire on there? So the speaker is about 3.5 inches. I reckon. I can't see the end of it, and maybe 2.5, 2.25, 3.5 by 2.25, which is a very small speaker. Most of these speakers are like 5x3 or whatever, which are much bigger, and that's probably the reason why it's quite tinny. It might also be that maybe one of the capacitors has gone a bit funny and is knocking out the bass response. There's no tone control on this thing at all, but I mean, like I said, it's the same size radio as the RGD Rover, and the RGD Rover has a lovely bass response for the size of radio, and it's running off the same power of 6 volts, so I don't really see the excuse for it being so poor. As I mentioned, I sort of trailed earlier, if you look here, it's quite a simple tuning thing, and you could tell that obviously because there's not much travel. Usually these tuning things are complicated because you've got to wind it through a long scale, all this long, and you've got to make that go several turns with the tuning knob, but in this case it doesn't have to. So if I were to break this, and I'm going to try not to, I wouldn't have as hard a time rewinding it. Everything else looks pretty in order, really. I might see if I can find a better speaker for this. The interesting thing would be to try is to take the output of this and plug it into a portable speaker and see if that sounds any better, or whether that would indicate whether or not it's actually the speaker or the circuitry itself. I think we might have a go at that. So let's put it back together and give it a try.
Now, more of the biggest songs all day long.
Yeah, well, I can't say I'm too impressed with the bass, having put it through this little portable thing here, and this is actually generally quite bass heavy, I find. Um, and it's not, I'm surprised. So I think maybe there is something wrong with the circuitry as well. Although that tiny speaker doesn't help. I mean, I know this is a tiny speaker, but this is a more modern thing, specially engineered to give you a bit better performance than you would have had back in 1970s. So yeah, it might be worth having a look at the circuitry on this at some point. So that's what I will definitely do is give it a bit of a clean up, and if I can improve the bass, I'll come back and we'll have a look at it in a part 2.